Don't worry, I'm not messing with your minds here. This isn't the end of the video. This is the end of the world. Okay, I'll admit it, I'm messing with your minds. It isn't the end of the world yet. There are probably a few decades left. I know when the world will end, and I feel some kind of burden and celestial duty to share some serious inside information direct from the highest office in the universe with you. So that the next time some doomsday cults start spreading their crackpot peanut butter conspiracy codswallop again, you can sit back, relax, and polish off a bottle of Jack Daniel in the swimming pool and enjoy their lunacy instead of wasting energy on a panic attack. As I say, I know when it will all end, and there are two events that still have to take place before that happens, and happen it will. And you will find out how I know this as this riveting story unfolds. At this stage, let me just say that when the Israelis send their bulldozers onto the Temple Mount to reclaim their Holy of Holies, you could cash in your portfolios before they start their concrete mixers up. When the Israelis rebuild their third temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, the final battle on earth will follow. And how's this for poetic irony? It will be at the exact same site the first battle on earth was fought. Armageddon is not just another word for apocalypse. It is a place right here on earth. It is halfway between Tel Aviv and Nazareth, and you can catch a bus there for a few shekel. Tel Megiddo is also known as the Hill of the Ruler, which is a misnomer, firstly because 6,000 years ago there wasn't a hill there. It is actually the mound of the ruins of 26 cities and civilizations that were obliterated during battle there. No wonder the real estate market there dried up a few centuries ago. Megiddo has been ground zero more times than any other place on the planet. Secondly, no ruler that ruled there ever survived. So for me, it should be called the Hill of the Fallen. Today it is preserved as a national park and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But don't let its breathtaking beauty and panoramic views fool you. It is probably the most terrifying place you can ever visit alone on this planet. I went there. Believe me when I say it is the proverbial valley of death. The link to the video detailing my haunting visit to Armageddon is in the description box below. Even though the story follows on from that one, you can watch this one first. They are separate but interlinked stories, and it doesn't really matter which order you watch them in. But before I start this video, please don't forget to hit the red subscribe button below the video. It will turn grey and you will instantly become a subscriber. You can either interrupt your viewing for a moment and do it now, or do it after watching the video, but it's critically important that you do so. I would love to keep the channel going, but unless we reach the 1,000 subscriber mark, it will not be worth the thousands of hours of hard work it takes to produce these videos. Producing content for YouTube is a full-time job. In actual fact, it is much, much more than the traditional full-time job that you may have. It took me over a month to produce Posbefok in another name, working 7 days a week for up to 14 hours a day. That's 450 hours of work on one video, or the equivalent of 10 weeks of working a regular 8 to 5 job. All it takes for you to subscribe is a few seconds. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into my reluctant and earth-shattering visit to the Holy of Holies in 1999. I can assure you, it wasn't part of my plan. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was fiction. Every word of this story is true. After all the previous Doomsday disappointments, I haven't given up hope. But I have given up hope for humanity. Let's face it, folks, the human race has just about run its race. It has run out of ideas, and it is now, without a doubt, the most useless species on the planet. No contest. Look around you. The evidence is everywhere. Stop walking around with your eyes wide shut or glued to your little LED cyber screen. Snap out of your trances. There's a world beyond your immediate 6-foot range of view. While you obliviously walk around in a wired trance, there are things going down. By the way, women need to imagine 8 foot to visualize what I'm talking about here. Like lemmings, the human race is running toward the edge of the precipice at full tilt. Madness has taken control and the extinction of the species looms large on the horizon. That's why I root for Doomsday. We have overstayed our welcome on this planet, and it's time for us to fuck off. We all have to fuck off at some stage anyway, so what's the big deal? It may as well be one big mass event, a total genocide. Humans have inflicted genocide on its own kind for thousands of years and has steadfastly devoted most of its time on the planet creating the tools to do it more effectively. But the big nuclear threat is all bullshit. Just another false flag in the endless fear psyop they use to keep us in check. We always have to have something to fear. They started with that bullshit all the way back in the 60s. Let's do a quick recap. In the 70s and 80s, we were told that the ozone layer was going to fry us all by the 1990s. After surviving this grave threat to our existence, we had to endure Al Gore traveling around the world in his Hummer and private jet predicting that we would be destroyed by global warming and that everything would freeze and die and that we would be in an ice age by the year 2000. Then after that turned out to be another hoax, they tried to divert our attention with a Y2K bug that would destroy all computers and collapse all systems and wipe out all records. They told us that planes would fall from the sky. I was so disappointed. It was all just another pile of bullshit peddled by the media. And right now, they are working on the next big production, the coming climate apocalypse. The climate is our firm favorite. They are already starting to ramp up the climate doomsday psyop, telling us the exact same garbage Al Gore told us in the 1990s. Only now, they are using this little doomsday goblin and these stupid talking heads and stronger words like extinction and apocalypse. And we buy it every time. I knew that when they taught us that Chicken Little, the sky is falling fable in grade 4, it would have lasting effects, but I never imagined this. Did you know that today psychiatrists are dealing with a new wave of mental illness? It's called climate change anxiety. This isn't a joke, folks. This is real. Now, read my lips here. Read them very, very carefully. There is no imminent climate extinction threat. Even if there was one, there is zero we can do about it. No matter how much we recycle our garbage or eat less farty foods. And you vegans aren't doing the planet any favors with your flatulent diets. Don't you listen to America's rising New Star future president, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez? Cows are one of the biggest CO2 emitters on the planet. You should be eating them instead of competing with them for food. Cows taste better than grass, believe me, take it from me. And if you want to save the world, I'll tell you what to do. Go out and have a cheeseburger. But there's an event that will lead to our entropic extinction on the horizon. And it is predicted in the scriptures. Even if you don't believe in the scriptures, entropy is a scientific fact. And the human race is in an advanced state of entropy. If you deny this, my featherless friends, you are living in a fool's paradise. And if you don't believe in the scriptures, you are the village idiot. I can prove that atheism is a mental disorder. But I will do a deep dive into that cesspool of human idiocy in my next video. Everything has a beginning and an end. The only two things that don't are infinity and eternity, and we know nothing about either. Our feeble, puny science cannot even explain our existence in this time-limited dimension, which began 6,000 years ago. Relax, Eva, man. I'm not talking about the planet here. I'm talking about mankind. I don't care how many billion years old you think the planet is. Or if you think your ancestor used to swing from a tree, scratch its ass raw, and then lick its fingers. The fact is that 2,000 years ago, a man came and tried to set an example for us, but we killed him, just like we have killed all others that try to follow in his footsteps. I can also prove that he existed. Until the Edict of Milan was passed into legislation in 313 AD, thousands and perhaps even millions were beaten, imprisoned, and murdered in his name. It is well-documented history, and the Edict of Milan remains in the Roman law system we use to this day. Sorry, ape man, you can't deny this inconvenient truth. You can accuse me of denying your version of science, but only a fool denies history. Look at the people we have killed. Jesus, Gandhi, John Lennon, Martin Luther King, John Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, Malcolm X. What happened? We said, fuck you, take that. Bang, right in the fucking head. I bet if Jesus Christ was alive today, he'd be gunned down by the CIA. Apparently, we aren't ready for loving and caring for one another and living in harmony. The recent pandemic showed us exactly what we are. A bunch of selfish, cowardly, evil, self-centered pricks only interested in our own self-preservation. But let me balance the books here. I view those who go to church to give thanks for their blessings while driving past people sheltering under bridges in alleys and shop doorways without even casting as much as a side glance at them with the same contempt I have for atheists. In fact, on that front, there's probably more compassionate atheists than so-called charitable Christians. I think Jesus made his views quite clear in his Sermon on the Mount. Going to church does not mean salvation. But there is an apocalypse, and it's happening right now. The zombie apocalypse. You don't hear about it on TV. It doesn't fit their woke narrative. So, let me light up another vitamin C coffin nail and take you on a quick whirlwind trip around your world to prove my point. As we go along, I'll explain entropy to you. It has been omitted from science lessons, but it is at the very core of all things science and has been observed repeatedly, unlike evolution, which has never been observed, but is nevertheless taught as fact. Conceptually, evolution is the opposite of entropy. Entropy is the scientific fact that all systems break down over time. They do not increment and they do not enhance. They break down. Examples of this are extinct species, tens of thousands of them, and extinct civilizations, thousands of them. The Mayans are a prime example of entropy, or human entropy. They used more advanced technology than other civilizations at the time, but technology is only beneficial to a point before it leads to destruction. We are in an advanced state of entropy, thanks to technology. Technology and entropy go hand in hand, and we, humans, never learn from history. Do you need to see more evidence to get the point? Here's a day scene from the land of the free, the mighty USA. And this is now, folks, this is right now, today, in 2022. This is going on while people indulge in absurd, abstract insanities like climate psychosis and gender stereotyping. And this is me making this video, freezing my bollocks off here. But it's worth it, I'm enjoying myself, freaking you lot out. Now, I'm not all that great at biology. I got kicked out of class the day I attacked the teacher for dissecting a frog. But I know enough to know that I have only ever observed two genders. The one has an unsightly pair of appendages, while the other has been blessed with far more sightly equipment. They even make for fantastic and spectacular artistic entertainment. Now, image this. A bunch of hairy-ass males strutting around like that with their bollocks hanging out. I rest my case. It takes just one pair of those unsightly appendages to ruin any moment, no matter how spectacular. Just one pair of this unsightly, unspectacular, ungodly tackle God encumbered us with. It's the number 2 question on the list of questions I have for God when I get to meet him some fine day, or when the final apocalypse comes. Well, on a positive note, I suppose I can say that this pre-apocalypse we are pretending not to notice is more visually appealing than the one that will finally come our way. Perhaps. perhaps sooner, as some may think. Speaking of noticing things, have you noticed that humans resemble their mothers when they are babies? Their fathers in their teens and young adulthood, and then more like their mothers, again, as they grow older and older. Have you ever thought about that? I only thought about it 3 minutes ago. And I bet all of you are now. I told you I was going to mess with your minds. It's best I get it done before we get to the real part of the story. So here's another one. Did you know that humans are the only species where the female is more beautiful than the male? Take a look at all of this. Look at them. From guppies to peacocks to lions. Why couldn't our peacock look like a peacock or have a head and mane like a lion? Why did it have to look like a peacock after it's been roasted on an oven tray in butter for 3 hours? I roasted mine on an oven tray for 3 hours today and they still look the same. Maybe it's because I use margarine. Tomorrow I'll give it a try with butter. With butter going at almost 200,000 Rand a ton, one has to be practical in these apocalyptic inflationary times. Didn't exactly find it to be that. Tel Aviv, which is named the Big Orange, is the New York of the Middle East. It is rated one of the top 10 party destinations in the world by Penthouse magazine, and I was there to party. It seems God had other plans. I travelled to Israel a week ahead of my friend Joel, who was coming over to visit his homeland for the first time. The plan was that we would meet at the Zion Gate entrance to the Old City in Jerusalem. As usual, Joel was late. The sun was beating down on my thumping head. I had been trying my luck in the many beachfront pubs and clubs that line the shores of the beachfront strip in Tel Aviv into the early hours of the morning. I lost count of how many pints of Tuborg I had after the 10th one, and all I had to show for my nefarious mission was a severe case of alcohol poisoning, and the blazing Jerusalem sun was showing me no mercy. I was hugely relieved to see an ice cream kiosk nearby, and I bought a Coke and an ice cream and took up a seat on a nearby fountain wall to wait for Joel in the blistering heat, contemplating what revenge I would take on him for being late, which, as I mentioned earlier, was something he was notorious for. My thoughts were interrupted by an Arab guy who offered to take me on a tour of the Temple Mount. I told him that I was waiting for someone. I actually had no interest in doing anything in that heat, and even less interest in visiting the Mount. 20 minutes and another 3 Cokes later, he was back. His persistence paid off on this occasion because I decided that the best revenge I could exact on Joel was to make him wait for me in the blazing noonday sun for a half an hour or an hour. I went over to the girl running the ice cream kiosk who I was considering proposing marriage to after she gave me a bottle of water for free, thinking I was coming back for yet another Coke. She scolded me. She said, "You have enough Coke already. Now you must drink water." I took the water, which she refused payment for, and asked if she would mind looking out for Joel while I was away. She asked me to describe him, so I told her to keep an eye out for a guy who looked like a cross between Bart Simpson and John Travolta. She laughed, looking a bit puzzled, but that was an exact description of Joel. So I told her, I said, "Don't worry, you'll recognize him the moment you see him," I assured her. As we approached the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the dazzling glare of the sun on its shimmering gold tile roof made my eyes ache and sent stabbing pains into my brain. I thought about paying the guy his 100 shekel fee and abandoning the tour, but looking down at the sight of the people praying at the Wailing Wall to my left intrigued me as we walked up the ramp to the heavily guarded border checkpoint. The tout, who by now had told me that his name was Omar, asked me to get my passport ready. After we passed through the turnstiles, Omar led me towards the resplendent Al-Aqsa Mosque. We took our shoes off outside and entered. There were a few robed guys rocking back and forth on their knees on the carpet praying. The only difference between them and the guys rocking back and forth at the wall below was that they were kneeling instead of standing, wore white instead of black, and were praying to different gods. Omar silently led me to a glass enclosure towards the back of the mosque. Enshrined behind the glass was a rock. Omar told me that it was the place both Jews and Christians believe God made man out of dust from, and the place where Abraham was going to sacrifice his son, until an angel appeared and told him not to. He also told me that it was what the Jews call the Holy of Holies, and the place Muslims believe Muhammad had ascended to heaven from. The three Abrahamic religions collide at this ancient rock. He asked me if I wanted a few minutes to myself before we proceeded. You don't get to stand at the place where God made man every day, so I nodded and he politely stepped back a few paces. I instinctively closed my still aching eyes, more for relief than anything else, and I can assure you that I certainly wasn't expecting what happened next. A voice spoke to me, and it wasn't Morgan Freeman's. It said, "Behold, in Zion I cast a stumbling stone. Where it began it shall end." Then I saw visions of the world's cities crumbling and crashing to earth. I saw the Eiffel Tower topple and huge buildings drop in plumes of smoke and dust. 2 years later, on September 11, 2001, I saw two of the largest in the world come crashing down, and I thought, this is it. As my forgotten experience on the top of the Temple Mount came rushing back to me. Until 9/11, I had put the epiphany I had on the Temple Mount out of my mind. I wasn't ready to process it at that stage of my life. I'd only lost my virginity on the eve of my 30th birthday a few years before, and I had a lot of catching up to do. But I was wrong. It was not the end, it was only the beginning of the end. There are still too many prophecies yet to be fulfilled. The coming cashless society where you will only be allowed to buy and sell if you have the mark of approval. Strange that a Bronze Age goat herder would foresee something like that happening 2,000 years later, isn't it, Einstein? Another thing your science can't explain. But the tragic irony is that your science is very much part of it now. If the statistics are correct, 90% of you have already been voluntarily luciferized. I bet most of you don't know that you have been injected with it. There's also a not so subtle irony in it. Luciferase. Yes, think about that. And do you know what luciferase is? You know what you allowed yourself to be injected with? It's an indelible ink extract from fireflies that has no medical purpose. But it does have a purpose. New scanning technology will soon turn you into a walking barcode that can be scanned at the supermarket checkout like a box of cornflakes. How do you feel about that? Yeah, laugh as much as you like. So is Lucifer. You are already a walking GPS coordinate thanks to your technology. It's the next logical step. But anything Bill Gates backs has to be for the greater good of humanity, doesn't it? He's a philanthropist like Jacob Rothschild, who designed the third Jewish temple. The plans for the third Jewish temple have already been drawn up. It's even called the Rothschild's Temple. And I bet even fewer of you know that he pays George Soros, another fantastic philanthropist, who assisted the Nazis commit genocide 7 decades ago. But that is now a distant memory. And of course, history is for fools, isn't it? But nevertheless, I am going to give you a quick history lesson before I go. The science lesson is over. The ancient city of Jerusalem holds the key to the future of mankind, and you have to admit that the irony that the place it all began will be the place it ends will be an epically poetic end for planet Ignoramus. That's what I call Earth, planet ignoramus, and it is inhabited by ignoramuses in the main and apes. So let me update you on recent events in Jerusalem in case you think this is all crackpot bullshit I have concocted. It's all very recent history, and like it or not, Donald Trump is part of that history. Sorry, Trumpophobes, buckle up. Trump moved the USA Embassy to Jerusalem. It's one of the first things he did in office. Every POTUS since Kennedy had promised to do that, but none of them had ever had the balls to follow through on it. You can say whatever you like about Trump, but one thing you cannot dispute is that he had balls until he caved in and let them take away the election with the greatest fraud in history in 2020. I consider him an absolute coward for doing that. He is also the first POTUS to state that Jerusalem is the undivided capital of Israel, defying the UN and other world leaders who propose a two-state solution with Jerusalem as a shared capital. You're more likely to see the Eiffel Tower topple over than ever seeing that happen. And when you see that happen, I bet you will remember this video. Nobody has ever been nuts enough or had the nuts to make that kind of prediction. Remember, you heard it here first. And I know that's what many of you are thinking, that I'm nuts. But you would be very wrong. I am just telling you what I saw that day in Jerusalem. Even I briefly thought I was nuts. But as my favorite writer of all time, Charles Bukowski, once wrote, some people never go crazy. What truly horrible lives they must lead. I don't think there's ever been a truer wisdom than that. I equate him with William Shakespeare, who dropped this line into one of his most famous plays, Hamlet, and it couldn't be more apt today. Read it. I'll give you 10 seconds to digest it. Some people say that Donald Trump was predicted in the Bible, in Isaiah 45, which talks about a great leader and friend of Israel who builds a wall. POTUS 45, Isaiah 45. Random? You decide. Will Trump win again in 2024? Of course he will. But will he? What am I talking about here? Tell you what I'm talking about. Joseph Stalin said that it is not those who vote that count, but those that count the votes. Democracy died in 2020, folks. So did sanity. In 2016, after losing the election despite heavy rigging, Hillary Clinton said that people aren't capable of deciding who to elect as their chosen leaders anymore. And guess what? She's partly correct, but not for the reasons you think. Sadly, there may not be enough time left to put that right, because there is a distinct possibility that the United States might not even exist by 2024. Yes. We have seen the damage this demented, crooked dope and his cackling, gobbling turkey impersonator, Kamala Felicia Harris, have done in a mere 18 months. Can America survive a full 48 months of this woke madness? In less than 600 days since Trump vacated his office or abdicated his office, the USA has become the laughing stock of the planet. It's on its knees. Kamala Harris probably spent as many days on hers getting to where she is today. She fellacioed her way all the way to the top. She's blown more senators and presidents than Madonna has toy boys and record producers. She even offered her services to all the men who voted for Hillary in 2016. I'm talking about Madonna here. This is how far gone fucked up the world is today, people. We are living in an absolute insanity. Only Doomsday can put an end to this madness. And that's why I am rooting for Kamala Harris to become the President of the United States. That will speed things up. Can you imagine that thing being the most powerful person on the planet? And if 80 million Americans really voted for this pair of cringeworthy, embarrassing morons in 2020? You cannot say that the USA doesn't deserve what's coming its way. Anyone with half a brain knows that the 2020 election was rigged. But as usual, it has been conveniently written off as a right-wing conspiracy theory, as all things are. This is the end of the video. I'm not joking this time. But I have decided to add the Buster Armageddon video because I know scrolling through a playlist is too much trouble for the majority of you. Even taking a few seconds to subscribe seems an almighty inconvenience to you hedonistic heathens. Of the 30,000 people who have viewed the videos on my channel, only 425 have subscribed. Maybe I should produce a Gungam style video. That idiot got over 6 billion hits. That made me lower my estimation of the global IQ to below 69 for the first time. Since 2020, however, which is by far the most insane year ever witnessed in human history so far, I've lowered it another 10 points. So we have a global IQ of sub-60 levels. Idiocracy was not a movie. It was a prediction. I suggest you watch it. It's hilarious, but it's also frightening. So this is the end of the Hooray for Doomsday story, and you're probably saying, hooray, too. You can stick around and carry on watching the Buster Armageddon, or piss off and go and take another selfie, or watch Lucifer on Netflix. There's a good chance a lot of you will be meeting him someday. Not me, I'm going fishing. That would be my idea of an eternal heaven, fishing with the 69 people and animals I have loved. 70, counting Maria Sharapova. Hopefully, that's not too much to ask for. I'm sorry, but the eternal church service version doesn't quite cut it for me. It sounds more like hell, in fact. That's why I didn't present the story to you as a sermon. I'm done with sermons and religious piety. The only sermon that means something to me is the Sermon on the Mount. And as flawed as I am, I know God is with me. In fact, He helped me along the way making this video whenever I thought of quitting. Earlier I told you that producing Bosbefok in the other name took me over 450 hours. This one took almost as long, but I'll tell you about that in another video, if I ever feel the need to. So if you want me to produce more videos, please share this one with your friends via email, Facebook, or whatever other app you use. Right now, I'm all apped out. This YouTube channel is my last stand in the cyber world. Frankly, I'd rather shoot my computer out than ever return to Facebook. So if you want to keep the channel going, you know what to do. So, perhaps for the final time, over and out. And, by the way, insulting you is my way of loving you. But there's no reason to thank me. One morning in Tel Aviv, I woke up with an Armageddon of a hangover. after a night of revelry in the pubs and clubs in the city that never sleeps. Tel Aviv, also known as the Big Orange, is the Big Apple of the Middle East. It has been voted one of the party capitals of the world next to Cancun and Bangkok. If Jerusalem is the holy city, Tel Aviv is most certainly the unholy city. Every vice imaginable is available, from Eastern European and Russian hookers plying the oldest profession on the streets to drugs and sex on the beach, with the fresh out of college backpacker of your choice, from the country of your choice. You can be in Paris one night and Toronto the next. They're all there to party. A word of warning to the wise here: send your sons there, not your daughters. For me, getting some kosher homegrown tushy was the ultimate prize. You know, that 7 years good luck thing. But it requires patience and skill. Israeli girls are tough cookies and very selective. So given my hungover condition, I decided that a relaxing trip in an air-conditioned bus would be the best way to least exert myself that day. The reason I picked Armageddon should be obvious. Who else will ever be able to say that they took a bus to Armageddon? The thought that God planted that thought into my mind to punish me for my sins in Sin City the previous night has crossed my mind subsequently. I bet not many of you knew there was a place called Armageddon out there. It's in Israel, northern Israel. I didn't know until that morning either. It is now preserved as a national park and UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is called the Hill of the Ruler, which strikes me as a bit of an oxymoron, considering the fact that 26 cities and 26 rulers have perished there. It's little wonder that the real estate market there dried up. Ticket to Megiddo, I told the lady at the terminus kiosk. She looked bemused. I get that a lot from women, so I paid little attention to her reaction. However, when I got the same reaction from the bus driver after giving him my ticket, I began to sense that I could be on another impulsive escapade I may live to regret. After about an hour, the bus stopped in the middle of nowhere. The only thing there was a tiny bus stop. The driver turned around to me and indicated that this was Megiddo, the destination I had chosen. It was as hot as hell that day, well over 35 degrees Celsius. But it felt freezing to me. Now I know what the Eagles meant with their oddly titled album, Hell Freezes Over. I was literally shivering. I was also literally shitting my pants. It was midday on a hill with the sun beating down, and I was the loneliest and most frightened and vulnerable I've ever felt. Not even coming under fire in Namibia, or the other Nam, as I call it. There I felt in control. Since then, I've often thought about the Bible talking about we wrestle not against flesh and blood but against principalities and powers. But the only thought on my mind at that time was, I've got to get the hell out of this place as fast as I can. The silence was deafening apart from the whoosh of the occasional passing vehicle. All I could hear was my heartbeat and the blood coursing through my bruised and battered brain. I crossed the road to the bus stop on the other side, praying for the next bus back to Tel Aviv to arrive, like a Pentecostalist prays for the Messiah to return. Only I meant it. I was one for 8 years. I know what I'm talking about. You know that Mammonic prosperity heretic bullshit. Those charismatic blessed brigade people out there, led by the likes of Joel Osteen and Ray McCauley. Well, let me tell you something about Joel Osteen. I think you should know. He needed a $250 million yacht to minister to his people. And he called it, wait for it, blessed. And good old Ray McCauley, he's been busted with whores and drugs so many times he makes Charlie Sheen look like a saint. He was the landlord of the infamous White House Ranch in Randburg, where girls worked as strippers and prostitutes, having had their passports confiscated. What a lovely guy. I know the word mammonic does not exist, but it should, mammon being the worship of money. Listen to this money-worshipping pulpit pervert and his clone-bot Stepford wife, Clone body is another word I think ought to exist.
Victoria and I want to wish you a very happy new year. We love you, and we're believing that 2022 is going to be an awesome year for you and your family, a blessed year, a productive year. The scripture says God will crown the year with a bountiful harvest. That's what we're believing for you. Not a get-by year, but a...
Yes, Joel, provided Armageddon doesn't start this year. After my unnerving trip to Armageddon, little did I know that I was just days away from another, even more bizarre experience. Have you ever heard of the Holy of Holies? I hadn't until I found myself standing there, once again in a dreadfully hungover state. And what happened there is undoubtedly the most profound experience I've ever had. I will tell that story in the next video. All of these stories are in my book, but since nobody reads anymore, I've decided to narrate them like this instead. There are 26 stories in all, and all of them are 100% true. From my encounters with Deepak Chopra, Sylvester Stallone, and P.W. Botha on Election Day in 1994, to my bizarre friendship with Yuri Ulyanitsky, the infamous Russian gangster, and how I almost got caught up in the crossfire that fateful night he was gunned down in Cape Town. Nothing in life is random, and that will become apparent to you as you follow these crazy stories. So until the next one, keep your wits about you and never ignore your gut instinct. It is never wrong.